All right. Hey, ninth graders, welcome to class. So if you're getting this video, this means I'm currently at a hospital right now with my baby being born. This is day one of me being gone. I'm going to be gone the next 5 days total, counting today. So a week from today, you will be back at the ag building. But between now and then, you're going to be at the junior high in the library each day. Okay. And I've got some projects for us to do each day. Today's probably the most, I don't want to say it's none of it's book work. But my goal is to teach you, kind of cram everything, the last bit that we want to learn about FFA history into this week. You're going to work on your $5 challenge. You're going to work on your Tulsa State Fair FFA board. So there's several projects for you to work on. Here's the big thing that I want to stress to you guys, okay? When I'm in class, I like to joke, I like to tease, I like to have a good time. But today you have a substitute teacher, and for the next week, you will have a substitute teacher. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that you are very, very respectful to that teacher. Okay. Um, if that teacher writes your name down on the sub note for each day they write it down for any reason, then you will get a detention. And I do not want to hear your side of the story. If you get sent to the office and they give you a detention, you're still getting another detention from me when I come back. Okay. So we'll double jeopardy this thing. I don't care. You will be. That substitute does not get paid enough. They do not get enough respect. They are so vitally important for our school. And I expect you guys to show that respect. Also, every single day this week is worth a substantial grade. Okay. I have assignments each day for you guys to do. Some of these assignments are worth 100 points. You don't even have 100 points in my class to this point. So please, please do these because they are very, very important to your grade. Okay. Hopefully, we're all going to be good. I know that I have an incredible group of ninth graders, both of you guys, fourth and fifth hour. You're all amazing. I know that you're going to be good. Please, please, please do that. Okay. While I'm gone, don't forget about all the FFA announcements. This Friday night, we have a petting zoo. Okay. We still got some open slots as of the time of me shooting this video. Sign up, help with the petting zoo. September 1st, I need some shirt designs. Turn your shirt designs in. Meat sale. Man, raise that money. We get the more money we raise, the more fun things we get to do in FFA. And then this next week, on Tuesday, we'll have our first cattle grading practice after school. And on Thursday, both before and after school, we'll have tryouts for opening ceremonies. So many things to do in FFA, so many opportunities. Don't miss out and miss out on those opportunities because you weren't paying attention because I was gone. Okay. So this week, as you can see today, if you look at my beautiful hair, got my little ponytail powdered wig on. Okay. This is George Washington Branscum here to teach you guys for today. And I'm here to teach you some FFA history. And so I think I don't want to spend more than one day on this, but later this week, you're going to create an FFA board where you're teaching complete strangers about FFA. How can you do that if you don't know the story of FFA? So your assignment is this. At the beginning of the hour, maybe now, the sub is passing you out a sheet of blank notebook paper. And this is going to be your 100-point grade for today. You're going to create a timeline, okay, of FFA. And so I would probably use the front and the back and use several levels, okay, and draw lines, and you can date it all the way from 1917 to today, 2022, okay? And all these years that I hit on, I expect you to highlight these in your timeline. So I want you to be able to see a big picture because our organization has changed so much. I would argue that FFA is the most diverse organization in the entire country and that there are an insane range and wealth of opportunities. If you're not interested in so many areas, there probably is an area that you are interested in, okay? When we started, it wasn't that way, okay? So today I want to dive into that history. You're going to see some pictures on the screen here. Write out this timeline, and I'll go through it pretty slow and try to pause between slides so that you have time to write all these down. But I have this PowerPoint, and I'm going to look at your timeline. I want to see it creative. I want to see it detailed. I want to see it looking pretty major. I'm checking out your handwriting, okay? So be sure that this is good. So with that, we're going to dive into today's FFA history lesson. Okay, guys, so we're just going to dive right in here. So the first date where your timeline should start is the year 1917. And if you are in my fourth hour class, this is the very beginning. The first 2 or 3 minutes of this video might be a little bit repetitive. Fifth hour, it's not, based on what we've covered so far. But please mark these down for me. So we start all the way in the year 1917. So in 1917, it was time to start ag classes, okay? And so at the time, we were looking at earlier, we had a law where we basically had started ag classes in college, and now we wanted to move them to high school. So in 1917, you should be writing basically what's bolded here for me, okay? So in 1917, we had the pass of the Smith-Hughes National Vocational Education Act. That's a mouthful. Basically, we had these two senators from Georgia, Senator Smith and Senator Hughes, that recognized that we needed to have ag in our classes in our schools. And this money helped pay a good chunk of the teacher's salary. Actually, it came from federal funding. Today, as an ag teacher, mine mostly comes from state funding, but back then it was a federal deal. And so this started what we call vo-ag classes. Now, vocational means job. It means something that you do for a living. So all of you guys, because girls, right, you were in home ec, learning how to cook and sew so you could raise your 17 children that you're going to give birth to, because that was the world we live in back then. Guys, you had to go out and get a job and provide for those 17 children, right? And so the point of ag class then was solely to give you a job. So you left here knowing how to be a crop farmer, how to be a rancher, how to be a welder. Like, you didn't need any additional training. You left this class with all the tools that you needed to be a farmer. Okay. And that's kind of what we looked at the time. Of course, schools were segregated. And so this was really offered to white male farm boys. Okay. Remember, I said we're super diverse today, but you can see reflecting in the world over 100 years ago, 105 to be exact, that was not the case. Okay. And so we started these vo-ag classes. Now, obviously, classes change drastically today. Today, your classes are called agriculture education. My job is for you to have knowledge about ag. Some of you will take that further and get additional training to work in ag, but most of you in here will just be informed consumers or home growers of gardens and farms, and that type of stuff. So my job is for you to have what we call ag literacy, to know about ag. My job is not to prepare you for a job directly in this organization. It's a big way that we've changed, okay? And so 8 years into that, we moved to the next year here in 1925. These farm boys got together and they said, well, now that we've got ag class, it'd be really cool if we could get together and kind of swap farm stories and swap secrets and talk about this stuff. And so in 1925, Virginia started this club for boys, and it was called the Future Farmers of Virginia. And so it was the FFV, okay? And this club was the model of FFA. There was a college professor named Henry Grosclose, who, I love that name, by the way, who was the father of FFA, meaning it was his idea. He was a professor, and he kind of got this started with everyone. And so these farm boys met together. They traded stories and all that kind of stuff. And so in 1925, we have the Future Farmers of Virginia. Note to the sub really quick, if I do end up moving fast and you can't keep up with some of these dates, we can ask to pause the video. That's totally fine. But be sure you're not writing down everything on the screen. You're just writing these short timelines over the slide. Just think, I'd put 1925, and we have the Future Farmers of Virginia, okay? Now we move to the year 1928, and it is on the screen. It's on this sign over here to the right. In 1928, we have actual FFA. So 3 years after we started in Virginia, we moved nationwide, and FFA was founded in Kansas City, Missouri, the Baltimore Hotel. That Baltimore Hotel is actually still here today. I had a student a couple years ago go and take a picture of this sign right here outside of the hotel, but it was at the old Hotel Baltimore right there. That's where FFA was founded. You can see the exact date, November 20th, 1928. We started FFA. At the time, it cost 10 cents. It cost a dime to join FFA. Today, that number is up to $7-ish. Okay, so in 1928, we founded FFA at Kansas City, Missouri at the Baltimore Hotel. Okay, how many people were at the first FFA convention in 1928? 33 farm boys, all of them from 18 states. So you see, very spread out. Oklahoma was one of those states. Remember, these were all white male farm boys. They were legitimately the future farmers of America. They were there with the goal to one day go into farming or ranching. Okay, so we had 33 farm boys from 18 states. They gathered in 1928 at Kansas City, Missouri at the Baltimore Hotel, and they founded FFA. Okay, they kind of founded this organization to get started. Okay. Some history. I don't necessarily need to write this down because it didn't go with the year, but you guys know who the advisor is. I am the advisor. There's three of us that are advisors to Stillwater FFA, right? Mr. Nipper, Ms. Cleaver, and Mr. Branscum. Well, the first national FFA advisor was this guy named Dr. C.H. Lane. And C.H. Lane was the first advisor. He wrote the FFA motto, which you're going to learn here in a little bit. Okay. He created the first livestock judging contest. So for some of you guys may be interested in livestock judging, some of you in this class have actually done livestock judging before. Our first national advisor, Dr. C.H. Slane, was actually the one who came up with that. He wrote the first manual. If you were in my ag class last year, you got one of those blue FFA manuals. He was the one that started that, okay? Here's the FFA motto. And actually, in the bottom right corner of your paper, I want you to write this out for me, okay? The FFA motto is as follows: learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. And I love this. I love this, right? So as you're writing this down, I want you to think about how this ties into everything we do, okay? That first line, learning to do. You are in this class to learn how to do, learning how to raise animals, learning how to weld, learning how to public speak. You are learning how to do those things. You're not just learning. Like today, we're kind of learning a bunch of information, and you may not see the end point of some of this. But when we start doing this hands-on learning in class, we are learning by doing. So that goes to the second line. Well, how do you learn? Well, you do by learning. You guys, when you start welding, you are going to learn by going out with a welding rod and messing up 1,000 times, okay, until you eventually stop getting that welding rod stuck and you run beautiful welding beads that don't break in the Branscum muscle test, okay? So we learn to do, but we can't really learn without doing. So those two lines are kind of interchangeable. They're kind of tied together. The next line, earning to live, right? And then living to serve. And so those two kind of go together as well. And this last line is why we do the $5 challenge. It ties into that FFA motto of living to serve. We are trying to serve. Okay, so that's our goal and our mission. We can use agriculture to make a difference, right? We're trying to feed the world. So hopefully you've got that FFA motto wrote out. It's 12 words: learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. Okay. We mentioned, so the first executive, secretary, treasurer guy, this was Henry Grosclose. We talked about the fact that he started the FFV, Future Farmers of Virginia. You don't have to write this guy's name down, but he also wrote the FFA Constitution as well. Okay, so what happened after that? Well, I want you to know this date. This one's important. Just the top half of this slide. So in 1929, we adopted the official FFA colors, and those were national blue and corn gold. Don't just say blue and gold. It's national blue and corn gold. And remember, the national sign is the patriotic side of FFA. We're trying to be patriotic, loving our country, loving what it stands for. And then corn gold, remember, corn is a symbol of what? Someone blurted out for me. What does corn stand for? Seeing if you're awake at this point. Okay, corn stands for unity, right? Because corn is grown in all 50 states. You don't have to write the one below it, but in 1929, we also had the first American Star Farmer, and we learned about awards the other day in class. A Star Farmer is one of the highest awards someone can win. Okay, and some dude from Arkansas named Carlton Patton was the first winner of that. So the American Star Farmer, one of you guys as a senior will win the Chapter Star Farmer for Stillwater FFA. That's a very prestigious award. That Star Farmer has been around since the second year FFA was created. So it is a major, major accomplishment award, okay? This was kind of interesting to me. I want you to put actually all three of these points, but you could write them pretty short. But three big things happened in 1930. Technically, girls could have joined ag the first 2 years. We don't have records of that happening. But in 1930, they actually passed a law that said no girls allowed, okay? Boys only, okay? Makes me think of the He-Man Woman Haters Club in the movie Little Rascals, where they put no girls allowed on the door, right? So we limited membership to boys only, and that's going to change here in about 39 years, and we'll talk about that. We had our first speech contest. You don't need to know the winner, but we had our first ever speech contest. So farming has always been at the root of FFA, but you can see from year 2, we're starting to diversify. We're adding public speaking in there. So we had our first speech contest. Some of you guys in here engage in public speaking through opening ceremonies or giving speeches or the agri-science fair, right? Our first speech contest was in 1930. So it just took 2 years for public speaking to be a part of FFA. And then we started our first official dress, and we talked about that one, right? The blue pants, the red shirt, button-up shirt, and the tie. There was no FFA jacket. It was just a kind of a dress-up uniform so that we all could look similar. Okay. This is a big one. In 1930, we adopted this thing called the FFA Creed. And here in about 2 months, you're going to be very familiar with it. It was written by this guy named E.M. Tiffany. The FFA Creed is fairly short. It has 5 paragraphs. And it's supposed to show what FFA stands for, the underlying values of our organization are in the FFA Creed by Mr. E.M. Tiffany. So in 1930, we had limit membership to boys. We had our first speech contest. We had our first official dress, and we added the FFA creed. So you can see, as we're trying to figure out our way in this organization, a lot happened that day. Hopefully, you guys are writing all those down. Remember, like I said, you don't have to make this long or full sentences or anything like that. You're just writing out those beside those years on your timeline. Okay. In 1938, or 33, sorry. So right 1933, we had the first FFA jacket. That's what I would write on my paper. So in 1933, we had the first FFA jacket. You can see it down here in the bottom right. That was a jacket from the 50s. It's almost like a Letterman jacket for FFA. See that big old S, the FFA patch there, okay? But it was designed by a guy named Gus Lintner, and I like that name, Lintner, because it makes you think of like lint in a pockets, right? And it's a clothes, okay? But he was the FFA band director. And he was like, we should have, and that's not a national band director, but just a local area band director. And he was like, we should all look the same. And so he made these jackets out of corduroy. And if you didn't know, corduroy comes from cotton. So he made these jackets, and the rest of FFA was like, that's really cool. We should add those to our official dress. And today we still use these. All these years later, the official dress is a really big part of what we do in FFA, okay? 81 years later is way out of whack because this is a little bit old. Some of these slides are a little bit old, right? But in 1933, we had our first FFA jacket by Mr. Gus Lintner. Okay, now I want you to think about the world that we were living in 1928, okay? Schools were segregated, and I don't agree with any of this stuff. This is the world we lived in. Schools were segregated by race. Men were learned had to go provide for their families. Females were learning how to take care of their homes. And so because of all that segregation, we didn't necessarily have room or acceptance for some other diverse groups, okay? So they created their own organization. And so I want you to know this in 1935. 1935, we founded this organization called the New Farmers of America. New Farmers of America, or NFA. New Farmers of America were founded for black males. So still not very inclusive. We're still leaving out females, okay? So if you were a female, white, black, or any other, race, it did not matter. You were still excluded, unfortunately. But New Farmers of America was founded in 1935, okay? And it definitely was centrally located in the South. You can see it was founded in Tuskegee, Alabama by a guy named H.O. Sargent. We have awards in FFA actually named after him today. He was a big part of agriculture, but he founded this organization called New Farmers of America, and it was for African American FFA members and not FFA members, African American farm boys. And like I said, it was founded in 1935, so just a mere 7 years after Future Farmers of America. This is the FFV emblem, and you'll see that really it's very, very similar to the FFA emblem, right? So it's got the eagle, it's got the owl, it's got the rising sun, it's got the plow. Remember, back then, the FFA emblem said vocational agriculture and FFA, so theirs was very similar there. The only big difference was it is what we call a ball of cotton instead of an ear of corn, okay? And obviously, this was in the South, and we think about the history of African Americans and what they've had to go through in our society. I think that's very historical, and it's very fitting in thinking about that. And so they had an NFA creed, just like we have an FFA creed. Theirs is a paragraph longer. And they had colors. So where we were blue and gold, they were actually black and gold. Okay, so that was that organization, New Farmers of America, founded in 1935. Okay, remember, you're just putting the years and what happens. All these additional details I think are really cool to learn and know, but are not mandatory for you to write down on your paper, okay? They had a national NFA week. So I know the other day in class, last week, we learned about FFA week. Ours is celebrated, and all of us are part of today, regardless of your race. It's celebrated during George Washington's birthday. Theirs was celebrated in the week of April 5th, which is the same week as Booker T. Washington's birthday. So lots of similarities. They had an emblem, they had a creed, they had official colors, they had NFA week, okay? So very similar things that they were going into, okay? I'm not going to make you write these two right here, but they did have some officers. Their first president was David Simmons there from Alabama. Interesting fact, no Oklahoman was ever a national NFA president, which is kind of interesting to me. That never happened. Okay, and we'll come back to actually the rest part of that, but I want to talk about this. I think this is really cool, okay? So 1942, big year that I would write on your paper, okay? 1942 FFA members served in World War II. I think that's big. In fact, over 138,000 FFA members served in World War II, and I think this is really cool. 1942, Harold Gum. I would put his name down. He was the national FFA president, and he stepped down from being the president to go serve in the war. And roughly about 7,000 of these FFA members actually died serving overseas, unfortunately, in World War II. But I think this is really amazing because Harold Gum had the organization, Oklahoma National FFA, had an insane number of FFA members at the time. It had grown to be very large, and he reached the prestigious position of being the president. Today, the National FFA president receives over $50,000. Okay. This is a huge, huge accomplishment. You are the head of this organization, and he stepped away from that to serve his country. And I think that's amazing. Okay. If you look at the 1942 National Convention, today we have about 60,000 people that come to National Convention. That year, because so many people were overseas fighting, only 217 FFA members came. And these were people that were not serving and only those that had won some kind of award. Okay. Now, what about the people that left behind? It's really cool. They were known for these things called victory gardens. And so tens of thousands of pounds of produce were raised by FFA chapters and donated for fresh food for our soldiers overseas. And you can actually look online and see some of the efforts of what FFA did in 1942 through 44 area. And it was really, really incredible. Okay. Music people. I know I have some people in here that are in band or orchestra or chorus. I want you to write these down for me. So while we had some local bands, today we added these, or these years we added these two. So in 1947, we had a national FFA band. So I know I have some band kids in here. If you want a trip to Indy next year for national convention, you can actually do a recording, get with me next summer, and you can be in the national FFA band. So you go up there for a week at Indy, you play for over 60,000 people in this band. The next year, we realized music is beautiful, but it's even more beautiful if we can add some words to it. And so now we added the National FFA Chorus in 1948. And so we had that National FFA Chorus. Our state does not have a state band, but it does have a state chorus. And so if you're a singer and you're interested in being in our state chorus next spring, we actually try out and you do recording videos in January. And so you can come talk to us about that. These are 2 years I would write down. So in 1947, we added the National FFA Band. And in 1948, we added the National FFA Chorus. And so these were two really cool moments as well as we kind of became more diverse and more like it's now not just for farm kids. We've got public speaking. We have a band. We have a chorus. I didn't put this year down, but back in the 30s, they founded a National FFA Leadership Camp. So you can see we're offering more opportunities for the people in our organization. Just unfortunately, all of our members still look kind of similar. Moving on, we get into diversity. And so I actually want to fix this typo really quick. So as we move into 1965, this is one of the biggest years in FFA history. You definitely want to write this down, okay? In 1965, schools were finally desegregated by race, right? We started merging together, people of all colors going to school together as we should be, okay? During that time, NFA and FFA merged together within FFA, and blacks and whites were allowed in FFA together. So I think it's important to put this 1965 African Americans joining our FFA organization. Okay, so 1965 African Americans joining FFA, and that was all because it really wasn't an FFA decision. Unfortunately, that was a decision based on the fact that now, because FFA is tied to school, right? If you're not in an ag class, you can't be an FFA. So with that in mind, now that everyone is going to school together, we're able to incorporate everyone into the same organization. Girls, though, you are still out of luck. In 1965, African Americans are welcome into our organization as long as you're a boy, okay? Unfortunately, we're still at girls' year in home ec class back in 1965, okay? I don't want you to write the names down, but I do want you to write these years down. I think they're important. So in 1974, we had the first African-American national officer, okay? And so his name is Fred McCleary, he's from Texas, but he was the first national officer. So you're looking at from 65 to 74, 9 years later, we had our first national officer that was African-American. 1994, okay, we're looking at nearly 30 years later. Corey Florney from Illinois became the first national president. So you don't have to write their names down, but I do want you to write down 1974, first African-American national officer, 1994, first African-American national president, okay? Because those are two very important milestones in our country. And since then, we've had obviously plenty of diversity. Several years ago, we had our first bilingual national president, different things like that. And so it's very important. And as FFA moves more into from the rural farm areas to more urban city centers, then even more opportunities for diversity include. So 1974, first national African-American national officer. 1994, first African-American national president. Leave space as you write these down, please, because we will be filling in some blanks in the middle because that's a 20-year gap right there. Women, here's the big year for you guys, 1969. 1969, we finally said it's time for this organization to become a lot more intelligent. So we need to bring girls on board, right? And so in 1969, women were first allowed in FFA. Okay, so from 1969 on, every single person was welcome to this organization. Women have been in FFA for, 53 years now, okay? As you see, it did not take long for women to take over this organization. If you look at Stillwater FFA today, right, 8 of our 9 chapter officers are girls, okay? In fact, women make up the majority of leadership positions within FFA today, even though they make up pretty much exactly 50% of the membership. Okay. Now, I don't want you to write names again, but in 1976, we had our first female national FFA officer. 1982, we had our first female national president. So you can see we only had 13 years from bringing women to the doors before they are running the show. Okay. And we appreciate the leadership that they bring to our organization today. So write those years. You don't have to write those names, but the years and the fact that in 1969, women were allowed in FFA. 76, we had our first female national officer. And 82, we had our first female national president. So write those years down for me, and then we'll move on to the next slide. If we need to pause here, we can. But otherwise, I'm just going to keep moving on here. Okay. I think this is interesting. I would write the years and just the name of the president throughout your deal here. And that's a typo, it looks like. Oh, Mr. Branscum. 4 presidents have spoken at the National FFA Convention when they were presidents. George Bush Sr. and Richard Nixon both have spoken at convention, but they were not presidents when they did that. And so our first ever president was in 1953, and that was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Okay. Gerald Ford was in 1974, and Jimmy Carter, who was the first former FFA member to elevate to being a national U.S. president, 1978. And then Donald Trump came in 2018. And so it is a long-standing tradition that each year since Dwight D. Eisenhower, National FFA does invite the president to speak at convention, but obviously they are very important, busy people. And so to this point, we have not had necessarily a whole lot of them say yes. But anyway, write the names and the years. So Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1953, Gerald Ford, 1974, Jimmy Carter in 78, and Donald J. Trump in 2018. And so those were, we actually, we're at National Convention in 2018 when Donald Trump spoke. And it was amazing how it changed the entire, and we're not getting into politics or how you feel about him, good or bad, but it was amazing how that changed the dynamic. Secret Service were there. Instead of 60,000 people, they actually had to limit the number of people that got to go in. And so we actually did not get to go in and see him speak. We watched it live stream on the bus ride back. And so as you probably can imagine with the president's security detail, it changes everything when they come speak at convention. So anyway, that's a little bit about the presidents. We're going to go ahead and move on now. Okay. This is probably the biggest year in the last, 40 years that have happened in National FFA. In 1988, over the 10 years going up to 1988, we saw a decrease in FFA membership. We saw a decrease of ag kids. And they did some studies, and they found out that, this whole Future Farmers of America thing is throwing people off because they hear that name and they're like, not a future farmer, not going to be a farmer. I don't want to be an ag. I don't want to be an FFA, which we know is silly. Hopefully you know that at this point because there's so many opportunities outside of farming, and almost every one of you in this room are not Future Farmers of America. So in 1988, we decided to change the name. for Future Farmers of America, just a national FFA organization. And that was created to show the diversity in our organization. It was to show that this isn't just cows, sows, and plows. It's public speaking, it's welding, it's floriculture. It's so many different things, and it's not just farming. So know that in 1988, we changed the name to the National FFA Organization. One of these magazines, these two dates I want you to write down. So our official FFA magazine is called the FFA New Horizons. If you were in ag last year, you got these in the mail, or you should have got these in the mail last year, okay? In 1952, we started our first FFA magazine, and it was called the National Future Farmers Magazine, okay? But you can see, if I slide back here and then move back forward, in 1988, we changed the name. Do we really want our magazine to be called the National Future Farmers Magazine? Who's going to read that magazine? Well, only future farmers, right? So today, in 1989, but then still continuing today, the FFA magazine is now called the FFA New Horizons. So I want those two dates wrote down. We started our magazine in 1952 with the name of the National Future Farmers Magazine. And then we moved to 1989, and we changed that name to the FFA New Horizons. So 1 year after we changed the name to just FFA, okay? This magazine is actually printed 4 times a year. It goes with the season. So there is a fall, winter, spring, and summer edition. Back in my day, uphill both ways, they were every other month. They were printed 6 times a year. But due to financial restraints, they are only printed 4 times a year now. So write those two dates down right there. All right, so moving on. Now we're going to talk about national conventions. So national convention, we're going to talk a little about leadership later in this week, so I'm only going to skim this one. The first national convention was in 1928, right? That's when FFA was founded. Okay, it was held in Kansas City every single year until, and put this down, in 1999, we moved to Louisville, Kentucky, okay? And that's where convention was. My first convention as an ag teacher was actually taking kids to Louisville, okay? And so we moved those locations. Kansas City, Missouri is just maybe not quite big enough of a city for 60,000 people, right? In 2006, we moved it to Indianapolis for the first time. So those two dates both need to go on your paper. 1999, National Convention went to Louisville, Kentucky. 2006 went to Indianapolis, Indiana. It's actually switched back and forth between Louisville, Kentucky, and Indianapolis a couple of times, but now it's back in Indianapolis, and it kind of seems like it's probably a pretty permanent solution now. National Convention is the largest gathering of high school students in the country, more than any other sport organization, club, whatever. Over 60,000 people are at National Convention each year. They used to use the Indianapolis Pacers basketball stadium. Today they use the Indianapolis Colts football stadium, and they cram everybody in there. Anyway, it's a really, really cool opportunity. Those of you guys that are competing this year in the National Agri-Science Fair, you'll get to experience that National FFA Convention. Okay, so that was a little bit of a really quick, fast and furious history of FFA guidelines, okay? Before you turn it in, you're actually going to go on Google Classroom in a minute, and it's going to say something like Branscum Paternity Leave, Day 1, and you're going to click on that link. And when you click on that link, it's going to give you the link to this official FFA manual right here. And these are the manuals that we usually give out kids in class. And if you open this, it makes cool sounds when you open it. If you open it, you can scroll down to the table of contents, and it's going to talk about the history of FFA. And it says it's on page 15. So I'm going to scoot ahead here. What cool sounds? The history of FFA. Okay. And then page 19 has this historical timeline of FFA. And you can zoom in if you want, right? So we can zoom in and out. And that from page 19 all the way to looks like page 25 shows you some history of FFA. And so here's what I'm going to ask you in your last bit of this assignment. You're going to log on the computers here as soon as this video ends. You're going to go to Google Classroom. You're going to look at today's assignment. You're going to click on it. You're going to go through, and I want you to find about 3 to 4 dates or milestones in this section that happened in FFA that I did not cover. Because as you can see, while it might seem like I covered a lot, you can see that there is a lot of stuff that I did not cover. So you're going to find about 3 to 4 that you think are important. I didn't talk about anything in your lifetime. So maybe you find something that's really cool. In 2021, they celebrated 50 years of alumni membership. I don't know if that's a major thing, but you may think that's really cool. I don't know. Anyway, So you're going to highlight that and put that on your paper. Once you have added 3 or 4 more onto your paper, then take some time to look through this manual. You can learn some things. You can see a lot of our FFA history over the years and different things about FFA, right? There's that NFA logo right there. You will turn this paper into the sub at the end of the hour, and that will be your big assignment grade for today. So be sure to go to this link, look at several 3 or 4 different dates that I did not hit on that you think are major milestones, and add that to your paper and turn it in. Okay. Guys, have a great day, and we'll continue on with class tomorrow.